Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on some interesting aspect of the design and constructions of TAPI 101. First, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Arvind H. Basham. He completed his PhD from IIT Madras, Masters of Engineering from IISc, BE from BMSc. Presently, he is with Christ, that is deemed to be university, as professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, actively involved in teachings of structural engineering subjects to graduates and postgraduate students. Apart from carrying out the research on steel plated shear walls and composite structure, prior to that, he was head of the Department of Civil Engineering at BMS IIT Bangalore. He was responsible for setting up the department and actively involved in teaching structural engineering subjects to graduate students. His research interests are in the stability of structures, instability analysis of thin walled structures, composites, shear walls, progressive collapse of structures. Dr. Arvind has guided several postgraduate students and 6 PhD students under his supervision. Dr. Arvind had worked in various research and design organizations in India as well as abroad. From late 80s to till early 90s, he was associated with SCRC Chennai as scientist, grade C, and involved in application of artificial intelligence to structural engineering, and his work won several awards. Subsequently, he has worked in several design organizations like Reading Construction Engineering UK, MSCB Bahrain, and Rehni Hill, Malaysia. And he had been involved in design and construction of Petronas Tower and few other tall structure, LRT for Kuala Lumpur, and several other infrastructure projects in Far East, industry structures in Middle East, and several hydro engineering projects in India. He has published several papers in ASC journals for competing structural engineering journals and several national and international conferences, and he has delivered several keynote addresses in various international and national conferences. With this introduction, now I would request Dr. Arvind to deliver a talk on some interesting aspect of designs and constructions of TAPI 101. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen, for the introduction. Okay, fine. How much time I have for presentation? About an hour?
1 hour 15 minutes.
1 hour 15 minutes.
1 hour 15 minutes, then followed by 15 minutes discussion.
Okay, 3:15. Okay, fine. Okay, we'll see some of the things about the Taipei 101. When it was done, when it was built, it was the tallest tower in the world, but subsequently Burj Khalifa overtook this, and now this is the second tallest tower. But there are a couple of buildings coming up in Saudi and some in China. It's likely to overtake all those things. So what was the goal of this, basically? Now, if you look at this, what the overall goal when we started this, it was not supposed to be the tallest skyscraper. But over a period of time, that this idea got into the people who are interested in building this, and so it became the world tallest skyscraper. They wanted, and it also has a multi-level shopping mall adjoining to this. There are a lot of tower houses and hundreds of stores and restaurants and clubs. This basically just giving you an idea about the building. Now, if you look at Taiwan, it just gives you an idea of where Taiwan is. This is the mainland of China, a little away from this. And where you have this, Taipei is here. Now, this is an island, you can see here. And you have the Philippine Sea on one side and have this, you also have the Taiwan Strait here. This zone, this particular island is subjected to numerous earthquakes and typhoons. So that was the first challenge that we had to encounter, that we'll encounter here. Then among the Taipei is one of the main city, then you also have Sainan, and then you also have Cochin. This is another place where you have it. This is also on the on the coastal line of this. Now, the challenges that we face here, that you have the structural need, plus you have to meet the demand. So all this thing, if you look at it, the developer requirements, architectural vision, construction constraints, and others, we need to balance that. How am I going to balance that? So especially when it comes to the tall structure, that is, you have the structural need, this is you have the requirement. With this, how am I going to balance it? So the challenge that you have here is that the premium for height. If you have a short building, generally your strength governs the design, and the gravity load is the one which is more predominant. For an intermediate height of building, strength and the drift both govern the design. Both gravity load and the lateral load, they do become predominant. But when it comes to the tall building, your drift, building motion becomes very, very important. So also the lateral load. So we need to govern that. As the height increases, you can see that moment at the base also increases, your drift also increases. Now, if you look at Type A 101, there's the basic details about it. Architect is CY Lee and Partners, structural design done by Thornton and Thomas City Engineers. And it is steel and in situ concrete and glass, that basically is a composite. It started in 1998 June, then finished into December 2004. Total height is 508 meters. Number of floors is 101. Plant area 50 by 50. Cost is 700 million. And then official complex, and it has a parking area. The first challenge was the height. That you feel that what you need to have is a way to find a way to support the floors. Then where are you going to locate the shaft for the elevators, and then your stair space, and also you have to find out where the space for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, and all those things, MEP. Then when you look at the economic height, it's equal to the rent of the added floor that brings in should be greater than the cost of the added floor. Now, prior to this Type A 101, there was an 85, still exists, 85-story TNC tower in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. That was the tallest building in the island of Taiwan. Now, they wanted to build something taller than this. That was the requirement from the project investors, and this also, and also from the financial firm. That resulted in the jump in the height of the building. So that what was originally not planned as the tallest tower became the tallest tower, and office space of 200,000 meters square, and also based on the individual area and general office layout. And they also wanted a podium of the same area of 200,000 square meters, and surrounding the retail space and a basement parking. The second challenge was the foundation. It's a soft rock. It occurs beneath 40 to 60 meters of clay and colluvial soil. The groundwater is about 2 meters below the grade. So based on the extensive investigation that is carried out by the geotechnical firm based at Taiwan, they suggested, in fact, that to have a slurry wall of 1.2 meter thick that will surround both the towers and the podium. It's about 47 meters in depth, and each podium also based on a single pile of 2 meter diameter. It's all a drill pierced socket, 5 meters to 28 meters into the bedrock till, and so that it can resist the uplift pressure and also the buoyancy effect of this, because you see that the water level is pretty high over there. And also for the buoyancy, you need that kind of a dead weight onto it to resist that. Now, we use single pier. I'd come down to the point why we adopted top-down construction. Then the slurry wall that supports it was excavated to the full depth with steel strutting. I hope you know what is steel strutting. Basically, to retain the soil, so that when you excavate into the soil, the ground, the soil slope is not stable, so it needs some type of support. It can't stand a vertical cut. So that is all supported with the help of steel strutting, like a beam which spans between the two. And on that's what was done, and a continuous thick mat of about 3 to 4.7 meters used as a transfer the load from the discrete column shear wall in a distributed pattern to the 380 drill pier. And we have used a steel framing system just in order to minimize the weight. Now, what is top-down construction? Usually, most of the cases, it's a bottom-up. You build the foundation. From the foundation comes the column, beams, and etc. But here, it's a reverse. You build all the things top. From the top, you go down to the bottom. This decision of this using the top-down construction, it all depends upon the constraints of the site and also the methodology that you feel that when you adopt, you can deliver it much faster. So that was the reason. So what it was the floor was cut to brace the perimeter wall around that, and excavation was carried out beneath the slab will also be there to support that, and then the superstructure framing also erected. We could do both top down and bottom up construction both. So the advantage of doing that is that the retail podium could be open a year before the tower, so that they can start earning the revenue from that. This gives you the general layout of the uh, building where we have the shopping mall of stars, and where we have the parking entry exit, the retail center, and then where you have the city park, etc. Basically, this is the thing what you require before you come up with it. We generally have the layout plan of this. Now, this is when the foundation was being done. You can see this the way it is, and this is the way we have the diaphragm wall going through, and this is the ground floor slab. Now, let's see, can this all going down further? Basically, this gives you an idea about the type of foundation that we have. Now, this is a sketch of a foundation because I don't have a photograph of this, where you have the tower and the podium. You can see this is the 380 piles of 1.5-meter diameter, and here you have about 167 piles of 202-meter diameter. We have clay, columnium, and soil. Underneath, you have a sandstone, and then it is embedded into rock. This is the kind of foundation that we have. This is the foundation plan of this whole thing. Then next comes your tower shape. What could be the shape? Generally, this is done by the architect. So architect comes up with the shape of the building. Now, initially, the Taipei 101, you can see it become a symbol of Taiwan. It has a repeating modules of you have it resembles a bamboo in a way, with and the tiers of pagodas. Initially, that's how it was planned. Each module of that has a narrow base and a wider top, as if it is as if a flower is opening into the sky. And this has 8 modules in it because 8 is a very holy number to the Chinese. It's a synonym with wealth. So the ninth module of that, what we have here is the main shaft and is supposed the architectural spire, and it has a smaller footprint comparatively. And below that, you have the repeated flare modules. Now, the first 25 story is shaped as a truncated pyramid, and it provides the necessary resistance, overturning resistance and the lateral stiffness compared to a straight shaft. That's the reason why you have that, and it engages the perimeter column. Then you have this transition from the lower pyramid to upper module that is highlighted by the medallion based in the Chinese coins. Now, this was the original configuration that what we had. That is, it's like a pagoda placed one above the other. You have the 8 modules of it. Now, look at the bamboo, how it is. It has a node which expands here. These are the connectivity windows. So the natural formation of bamboo reveals that it has got certain unique structural characteristics. Probably you would have listened to Dr. Jagdish Vengla's lecture on bamboo. This is exactly what it does. It has a long, narrow bamboo stem, provides support for a large foliage, and it provides a predictable support. So we looked at it and they got an idea how why can't it be like a bamboo? So even when these things are subjected to tsunamis or typhoon, they're able to bear the lateral load efficiently. That's the beauty of this. And that also, if you look at the geometric proportions of it, that's also very nice. So we can take a lot of things from the bamboo. So now if you look at the Type A 101, it exactly replicates this kind of features that you find in a bamboo. Now let's see what is the thing for this. Now, if you look at the wind force, that dominating force, lateral force, one of that you have it in three mutual direction. One on the one axis we call it as on the upward axis called a yawing, that is the lift. Second, the pitching and the rolling. These are the three things that has the rotations about the three axes that you have. Now, for this civil engineering structures, the moment corresponding to the vertical axis, that is the lift and the yawing moment, are of little significance. We need to look at pitching and the rolling. Therefore, the flow of wind, now it is considered a two-dimensional one, along wind and the across wind, that is called a wind, along wind response and the transverse wind response. So this is exactly where you find the drag force and the transverse wind is used to describe the crosswind. If you look at the effect of the wind on the structure, it has static, dynamic, and the aerodynamic effect. Now, we are more interested in the dynamic, the response of the wind, which is dynamic as well as aerodynamic effect. That should be analyzed in addition to the static wind force. Most of the cases, we treat wind as a static force, which is okay for a small size building or a medium sized building. But when it comes to tall structures, we necessarily have to look into the dynamic and the aerodynamic effects of this. So here we require the knowledge of fluid as well as structural mechanics in order to understand the interaction between the wind flow and the civil engineering structures of the building. Now, if you look at the winding in this, what we have, this is generally you can see in the code and everything that gives you an exponential one about the wind. This is the, what you see here in the red line is the fluctuating part of the wind. This is called a gust. And what you have here, this line is the, what is the, that represents your static load on this. So again, it's a function of your wind velocity. So as the building gets taller, the wind-induced dynamic force also becomes more becomes more predominant and start dictating your design. So this fluctuating wind is the one which causes the dynamic loads on the building. So we have both low frequency and also the resonant component that we have to look into, see that the building doesn't get into the resonance. That is what we are seeing here. We have the both yawing and the pitching moment onto this. You have to design the building for that. So now you can look at A and B. This is the A component is the static load, B is the low frequency background. They are dependent on the building geometry and the turbulence of the environment. But C is dependent on the building geometry, turbulence, and also the dynamic properties, that is the mass, stiffness, and the damping of the structure, that is the material that you have used in the structure. So how do I get the dynamic component? What causes that? Now, essentially, it is caused by the gust. The gust is what? It is a sudden brief increase in the speed, and then in the wind, and suddenly there is a lull. So this can reach the peak and go beyond. That means it varies from your place to place, where you can always measure the gust speed and then see that varies. Maybe your wind speed may be at least 18 miles per hour. That is the gust speed. The wind after lull, it may become 10 miles per hour. So you can see the fluctuation of the wind. Now, I'm not getting into the point of how the gusts are generated and all. It can cause either by the turbulence due to the friction, wind shear, solar heating of the ground, and various aspects of it. If you want to know more about it, you can get into the wind engineering. Now, there's another component is what is called as the vortex shedding, which you can see many of you have seen a coconut tree swaying in the wind. That's because of the vortex shedding. That's what causes the oscillation that takes place due to the airflow around it. Because it goes past a bluff body. Most of our civil engineering structures are bluff body. And most of the aerodynamics ones, that like aircraft and other things, are streamlined ones. Okay, so here it as the vortex shedding that is it happens, it creates a mechanical system and that has got a specific frequency which can excite and produce high vibrational load. So what you see here is the vortex shedding. You heard about the von Karman testing street. So basically, that's what it comes from here. So what happens is the upwind that is when before reaching there, it gets displaced on the either side of the building due to the boundary layer separation. Now this goes into the spiral. It sheds periodically on the either side of it, on the downstream side as it goes through here. And these wind components that are generated, they create a component transfers to that. So since the shedding occurs at the same instant on the either side of the building, if it occurs, there is no tendency to the building to vibrate in the transfer direction, but it need not be the case. It can differ. So how do you counter the wind? You have a high wind in this. So the skyscrapers that you're going to design will experience alternating crosswind forces due to the vortex shedding and also due to the alternating whirlpools in the dark. And Taiwan being the place where you can expect a typhoon that brings in a wind speed of almost 43.3 meters per second or 97 miles per hour. It averages over 10 minutes. Now that is at a height of 10 meters. So this is similar to a 3-second gust of 67 meters per second, or is 150 miles per hour. It can excite a skyscraper with a crosswind much greater than those that are normally used for the design. So you need to look at it. How can we counter this? How can we make the structure to resist these kind of wind? So what are the approaches available so that I can minimize this crosswind? So we have number of approaches to minimize the crosswind. One is the orientation. Then you have a setback of varying crosswinds. This is what is done in Burj Dubai. Then you also have a building where you can make it, you can twist it, and or you can induce porosity. That means allow the wind to pass through so that it doesn't excite it so much. So these are not a one that can be done. Third one, that is what we used in Taipei, is the softened corners. That the corners get softened, and as a result of that, I can control my response. We'll see that what happens. Now, what we have arrived at a shape. In most of the cases, the architects arrived at a shape, but that is not final. It has to undergo a wind tunnel test because the sharp corners around it can create a large crosswind excitation. And you have to find a way how that can be that response can be reduced either with a sawtooth or a notch corner, etc. So one way of doing that is the doing the wind tunnel test. Now this was the moment that you get. Let's just see the high moment you got with the initial shape of the building that you had, like a pagoda, what we had, so that it is 8 module of that. Subsequently, when you understood that the shape needs to be altered, that means you soften the corner, then the module corner, then you can see that the moment got reduced considerably, so we got the shape. Now you can see here, this is the way you soften the corners. It goes around this. This is the medullum that you have. So this is the corner that has been softened around. So as the wind flows through that, now the moment at the base reduces drastically because you're confusing the vortex around that, so it sheds away, it doesn't cause this. Also, you need additional damping that needs to be done. So we'll see what are the things that is required. This is basically a wind tunnel test. It's RWDI who did the wind tunnel test for them. And this is the various mode shape of the building that you have. Now, it's also very useful for this. Another important aspect that we need to look at, that while you carry out the wind tunnel test, is to see that the upper floors do not accelerate due to the wind. A certain amount of damping would be required for this, with and without typhoon. Now, What happens is because of the acceleration of the higher floors, people living in the higher floors will experience a lot of discomfort. They feel that the building is shaking and they get nervous about everything. So that's one thing we need to eliminate. We have to make sure that the building does not accelerate beyond the specified limit. That needs also to have the code, you have a codal provision for that based on the study that what should be the acceleration level at a higher floor. Now we have used the Taiwanese criteria of 5 millig here. This is the level to which it is written, and based on the written period of this, we have without and with and without typhoon, what should be the one? Now this is a wind analysis that you get with the moment how it reduces. So now we have two design criteria. As I told you earlier, this zone, this particular plate is subjected to typhoon as well as seismic load, both. So we need to incorporate both this, but both have a different design criteria. One, in order to counter the wind, I need weight. But if I increase the weight, I'm increasing the seismic load. So now I have to come to a balance. Now, if you look at for a human comfort, and as you go higher up, for a half year written period of 40 meters per second, here the acceleration should be less than 5 centimeters per second square. For a 50-year written period, what we calculate at a diff ratio, 5 by 1000. Then we also check for this various factors for a 100-year written period of this. What could be the stretch check? That is the factor load. So same way, the seismic load, if it has to remain elastic at 0.13 G, and we also looked at 950-year written period where to retain the stability of the structure at a 0.39 G. We'll see a little later how this helped us to arrive at the design criteria. Next is the structural system. If you look through this, there are, for a tall structure, if you look to the work of Fazlur Rahman, he has done extensive work in the area of tall structure. He has arrived at the different configurations of the structure depending on number of stories, the height, etc. So you have a lot of alternatives which we can look into. One is a frame tube that is closely spaced perimeter column that then are joined by the deep, stiff perimeter beam, panel beam. And they can form a rigid box-like thing. This was ruled out because of certain architectural features that the wide glass expanses designed by the owner, indirect load transfers to the setback at top of the each module, and the intrusive internal beam connecting building frame that has a sawtooth corner, again that can cause increase in the wind moment at the base. The other one was a bundle tube of multiple parallel frame crisscrossing each other. This was also ruled out as it have much wider column and for wide windows. Interior frames would subdivide the floors and can also adversely affect the space planning. Tube in tube, the central core, etc. That was also looked into. Now, the first step into this, when you look at the design methodology that comes into it, that's what we have to take the aerodynamic effect modification for a tall building in order to reduce the wind effect. That's where the architectural feature also comes into play. Second is to enhance the impact of structural system, reducing the response of the tall building to wind and also to both in the statically and the dynamic as well as aerodynamic effect. All these things have to be considered. They are interrelated too. So, so the structural system that was adopted was a central brace core connected by several perimeter columns on each building face, which has an outrigger trusses at the top and a bottom card incorporated into the framing of two adjacent floors. That means you can see it runs from one floor to the other. This is what is called as the mega frame. The outrigger trusses and outrigger column that basically help to stabilize the narrow core that you have. Now the belt truss that you have at each module, that you can see that the shade that it is narrow, then it widens up as a flower opening into the sky. So you have a setback. So that we have to gather the perimeter weight with a two outrigger super column. I'll come to the point what super column is on each way to the member sizes, and you have to have the for a gravity load and need the axial stiffness as well. Now, the provision of the mega frame gives an opportunity for the load distribution in some members, and it may be damaged with certain unforeseen event. And finally, here we decided that the wind dampers would be used in order to reduce the lateral vibrations due to wind. Again, it's all based on your wind tunnel test. This is the typical flooring plan of the lower floor that we have. What you see here, these are the super columns. This there you see 2 to 4, 6, 8 super columns that you have. The entire building is supported by these 8 super columns because the 8 is a very in it number 8 is very close to the heart Chinese. That's what it is. That's the reason why it's like that. So this is the upper story plan that we have. That is how the framing plan looks like. Now you have 2 by 4. You can see the outrigger trusses running around this. That's the 4 to go. One vertical belt truss, one horizontal belt truss, and this is the special moment resisting frame that we have designed here. Then how to improve the lateral system stiffness. That's what we want. So in order to prevent the damages to the facades and the partition, the requirement was that the drift should be H by 200 for 50 years term. Now, the large portion of the drift is created by the overturning rotation at the lower stories, and drift control required the increased column stiffness. So what we did was the hollow columns were filled with high strength concrete. They were adopted as a core for the super column. We'll soon see the sketch of the super column, you get an idea about it. Now, super columns the boxes that go up to the 90, level 90. They are made of steel plates, specially made steel plates of 50 to 80 mm thick, and we have used full penetration weld splices. And you have the box strap to resist the bulging, and the rebar strengthens the concrete, and you have also used shear stress to link concrete and the steel, basically to transfer the forces. And the core box of the super column is filled with 16,000 kPa concrete, where the extra stiffness is needed from the bottom of the basement to level 62. This is the super column. What you see here, these are the stiffness for the super plate for this. Now you have the reinforcement will come out from these holes that is been done. So you can see that this is basically a hollow column, but we needed extra stiffness for that in order to reduce the drift. So that's the reason why it is filled with the high strength concrete, and it also has a reinforcement coming up from it. In addition, it also has shear connectors into this. So you can just give an idea of the size of the super column that you have. You can see this is the height of an average height of a man, about 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 7 inches. And about this, how much of space is left here. So you can imagine the size of this column. And this is how it is fabricated at the site, then it then transferred to the location where we have. So the size of the column is 2.4 by 3 by 80 mm, and you have 70 MPa high strength concrete plate inside that. Now this is the sequence of welding that we have, because we don't want the steel to warp because of the heat. So that's why we have to have the sequence of welding that is very important in this case. This is how you have the super column filled with infill concrete. You can see that here, how the reinforcements are being placed. This is the spiral column which comes out of this circular column, and you have this reinforcement passing through. The next important criteria is the seismic design. Now, seismic design philosophy focuses on safety rather than comfort. Okay. Now, we don't want the building to collapse. That is the safety. We don't want any life to be lost in this. So the basic philosophy is that there's no minor shaking. There should not be any damage to the building. Moderate shaking, and there can be no structural damage. there can be damage to the non-structural element. But at the maximum design level, there can be certain structural damage, but it should not collapse. That's the most important thing. Now, if you look through the location of it, the building, it's very close to a fault plane nearby, and so the seismic activity is very high around this zone. Now, this wave can also be amplified by the soils to it. Can also amplify the waves and causes that we have two sets, primary and the secondary wave. So as the waves hit the surface, they can get amplified from this. This is what we have seen here. So it may start shaking once it experiences the ground motion here. This whole thing start shaking. Now, basically, what happens in case of earthquake is that it starts shaking the building. It's not a force actually; it's a displacement given to the building. That's what happens here. Now, the kind of it is tall or small, which is safer? That is a question that is coming to the point now. So the criteria that you have is the structural system should be stiff enough to resist the wind, just to limit the wind drift, but it should not overload the behavior desired for the seismic ductility. That is also an important thing. We need a ductile behavior for the seismic design. So the design for the stiffness, then check for the, you design for the wind, stiffness required for the wind, then check for the seismic ductility and the seismic strength. So now one thing that you can do here is that you can use an eccentrically braced frame which has performed very well against in a seismic zone. That could be one way you can think of, and you can have the web shear to control the beam flexure. And you, one thing you can use it, you can't do it just like that. It can induce undesirable flexibility for the wind condition. Then you can have an opening portion of the beam strengthened by side plates to maintain the stiffness and ensure that the link is not the controlling strength across the eccentric links. That means in case of the eccentric frame, the links serve as a fuse in case of a seismic event. So when this happens, like an electrical fuse, what happens when there is a spike in the current, the fuse blows off, protecting the remaining thing. Same thing happens here in case of an eccentrically braced frame, where the fuse, that the link between the just blows out. That means it gets damaged and it protects the remaining structure. That means that link absorbs the seismic energy that's been given to that. That is how it is. Second, when you are designing this kind of a structure, we don't want a column to collapse. We have the concept of weak beam, strong column. So we ensure that the section of the beam is such that the plastic hinges are formed in the beam. So that's the reason why the beam has a reduced section. That's where you're inducing the thing. That is exactly the shape of the beam that you have there. So the plastic hinge would be induced here in this zone. That is how it's being shaped. Next important aspect that you come to is the occupant comfort, where we have tried to increase the stiffness to meet the requirement of the wind. At the same time, we have to ensure that you are not overdoing it as it would cause, because we need a ductile behavior for the seismic load. So everything has to be looked into. So now we had a low inherent damping of 1% of critical in the moderate windstorm. So if you have this, if you don't have any external or additional damping built into it, this can be, the people living here can experience uncomfortable level of acceleration in this. So damping is absolutely necessary to absorb this extra energy that is being induced by the wind movement. So seeing that it is close to the fault plane about 200 meters from this, it's also prone to the fierce wind and earthquake. What is the criteria? What can we do here? So that means it has to withstand strong wind, yet remain rigid at the same time so that it can prevent a large sideways. Also, it be able to flexible enough so that it can uh, it can use the necessary hinges at the point that is required. So the flexibility prevents the structural damage, and the resistance ensures that the comfort of the occupant and protection of the glass. So the necessary strength for enlarging the critical structural elements such as bracing and the height of the Type A1 combines the demand both for environmental and additional. This is a simple example that we have. If the loads are not balanced here, this can twist, the swing can twist, but this can move in a straight way. That is what is required here. So you have to lessen the impact of the violent motion. So for that, we have to choose a gigantic tune mass damper. So the damper that was chosen is a steel sphere of 5.5 meters in diameter, and it weighs about 728 tons and is suspended from the 92nd to 87th floor. This design is a specialist design. It is all done by RWDI, so that this particular tune mass damper helps in absorbing the energy in case of typhoon or in case of a seismic thing, in case of an earthquake. So basically this. So you can see that this is a damper. It is the artistic view of the whole thing. This is suspended from the 92nd floor. It comes down to 87th floor. So it is suspended by steel cables. It is slung to the support. It has 8 viscous dampers in addition to that. It can move at 1.53 meters in any direction and reduce the sideways moment by 40%. In addition, we have 2 additional tune mass dampers of each weighing 7 tons installed in the tip of the spear that also provides protection against the strong winds. This is the construction of the tune mass damper. Next is the fatigue because of the alternating effect of it. So in order to take care of it, so we need some kind of a damper here. That's what we saw, that the damper does both the things. So we had 3 more shapes that identify the potentially creating significant stress ranges during the storm. So we needed a additional damper for this condition in order to improve the fatigue life of the spear. So this was a construction that was in progress from 1998 to 2001. You can see that whole thing is being done. And year 2002, on 31st of March, a major earthquake hit this. Now let's see what happened to the building. For a minute, I'll stop sharing. I'll open up the video. So when the earthquake hit that building, the top, the 2 cranes that were mounted at the top, they were not fixed to the base of the building. So they collapsed. That's what you can see. Now, if you look through the building, it looked like as if nothing has happened to the building. Um, if you really see this, it looks like the building had withstood the earthquake. So just the magnitude of the earthquake. So, so now you can see that the building was able to withstand the earthquake, but there was certain damage to the certain sections of the beams and the braking system that was adopted here. So after a period of 3 months, and everything was inspected, and they found that nothing else is wrong with it, we can go ahead with the construction. We proceeded with the construction, and in 2004, the building was inaugurated. This was the formal opening of the building. This is in 2003. Earlier, it was the first term as the Taipei mayor. He wanted to have this achievement. So they had a kind of a celebration, but formal opening took place on the eve of the new year of this 2004. Not, an earthquake hit Taipei 101, and there was also a typhoon. Now you can see how uh, the damper works to resist that. You can see the damper moment here. That huge ball is swinging. Again, I understand in the year 2016, they had a typhoon, and that reached to the design speed of 130, 138 miles per hour, and the building withstood that typhoon because of the presence of this mass damper. Now, basically, when it starts oscillating, it's absorbing the energy, extra energy that is put into it, and it dampens. And people moving around it will not be able to, feel that it is being subjected to an earthquake or is experiencing a high typhoon in this. So that's the beauty of this. So that's it. Uh, Thank you. Any questions from your side?
It was good. Now it is open discussion for participants. If you have any question, please update your question in chat box. Sir, can you tell about some little bit about foundations, sir, which you are talking about, soft soil and the diaphragm one?
I'm not competent to talk about the foundation. So, because that was almost done when I went there.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay. So, more on the structural side.
Yes, sir.
But they had some difficulties in doing it. That much I know.
Yeah, yeah. Can you please share that experience? Sir?
Experience is that because there's a soft soil, you tend to sink. You have to make sure that the building is on a firm strata. See, for example, we had the same problem in Petronas Tower. The foundation, what the original location of the building, if you had founded the building on there, underneath it, you had a steep limestone rock passing through. It was dipping down.
Okay.
Now, what happens there is your pile length will start varying.
Okay, sir.
At one place, you may have about 180 meters, another place, it could be even 300 meters. Now, this can lead to a differential settlement and it will become a leaning tower.
Okay. Okay.
So, this can happen. Same thing is there in case of Taipei 101 also. That's the reason why when they did it, we're able to see that the pipe length more or less uniform around that in the sketch. It doesn't vary much. So that is another important aspect which a geotechnical engineer has to look into in order to see that the building does not tilt. And the other aspect that you need to look into, that's the most difficult part for any foundation engineer, is that let's say you have built a foundation to a certain extent, and now you come back and say, look, increase the height by about 40 meters, 30 meters. You are
Yes, sir.
putting an additional load onto the foundation. Are you taking care of that? Did you anticipate that this kind of loads are likely to come onto it? So some kind of thing that they'll have to juggle around. Then in that case, we have to see how you can minimize the dead load coming onto the foundation. Yeah, I can't play around with the wind load, with the live load. Live load will be there. I can't reduce that. But to a certain extent, I can control the dead load that is coming on. So you use the alternative structural system to see that for the same weight of this thing, I can have a better configuration and things like that.
Sir, one more question here. They're asking up to what particular height of the structure, whether the wind will be governing or seismic will be governing.
There is no such thing at what height.
Okay, sir.
It can height doesn't play any role here. See, as far as the wind is concerned, because it's a low rise or a medium rise, that what generally what we see, you can see the exponential curve of this. At initial stage, it will be less. As it goes higher, the wind velocity becomes higher. That's why as the height increases, the higher flows tend to accelerate. That is a bigger problem. And then your dynamic effect comes into play because of that. So that is very important to this. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And one more question. Sanjeev is asking, is it good practice to use welding at the steel bars?
Welding of the steel bar, provided you have a good control at the site, you can
Okay,
use.
sir.
Not otherwise, we generally don't recommend the welding of the steel bar. The
Yeah.
reason is it sets up a residual stresses also within that. So that's the reason why. But here it's the steel plate. We are trying to weld a steel plate, not the rebars. Rebars are actually lapped, whereas this steel plates are welded. The reason why I show you that is the sequence of welding is the plate should not warp. Because of the heat of the welding, the plate tends to warp. In order to prevent that, we have to find the sequence of the weld, that how we need to weld it so that the plate doesn't warp. That's the reason.
Yes, sir. And one more question from Mega. She's asking, the corner decision modification of Taipei 101 building can reduce the vortex shredding too.
Yes, that is what has happened. See, that's why I showed you the sketch. The moment at the initial stage was very large. You see the
Okay.
graph. Now, subsequently, when you chamfer the corner, the moment got reduced because the vortex it confuses the vortex basically. I put it that way, so that it doesn't cause that kind of a crosswind. So then it brings down the moment in that.
And there in this, we have you have used top-down construction
Mm.
for the
Yeah.
basement.
Yeah, the for the certain portion, yes, they use top-down construction.
Okay, sir. Same similar construction in Bangalore, in that which Governor's Building Road, Vidhan Sauda. The
Yeah,
same technology we have adopted.
yeah, correct. It depends upon various site conditions that you have. Suppose I want something to be started off early. something which I can reduce the time taken by this. Now, you know that the foundation is all on a pile. Okay,
Yes.
so I know that I can drive the pile through that. So I will design the floor to take the construction load, temporary loads onto that. And
Yes.
then I can take the equipment down and start working, but the top floor can still be used for the other purpose, so that any shop or anything they want to have, they can always open it up and use it, so that it start generating the revenue. The reason why it was done like that is that they suddenly increased the height because they wanted that to be taller than TNC tower question. So that necessitated additional investment onto this building. As you know that the premium for height, as the height increases, your floor area cost also increases. But the rent that you get from that should offset the cost of construction of those floors. So in order to get the meet that return of investment on that, they put this condition that the mall should be open earlier than this. So that's the reason why we went for a top-down construction in that zone.
Yes. Same similar case study we have encountered in that Prestige Code
Uh-huh.
in Bangalore. There also next to that petrol pump was there. You can't
Yeah,
do excavation.
yeah, correct.
To retain that, we have used inclined rock anchors, and also for 35 structural piles was there, and we have used top-down constructions.
Yeah, sometimes you may not even have the space for the strutting. That
Yes.
can also happen. Under such circumstances, also it's better to go for top-down construction, so
Yes.
that you can, because you can use the diaphragm wall to, or the secant pile that you have to stabilize the soil.
Sir, when you are doing this diaphragm wall, whether the marking everything was exact or any piling layout was little bit out, have you come
Uh,
across that type of situation?
pardon, come again?
In this project, you are showing the diaphragm wall.
Yeah,
The marking of the piling and marking of the diaphragm wall or sheet pile is a very tricky thing. If you make
hmm.
minor mistake, the entire layout will be.
We use GPS for layout of everything.
Yeah.
So we could accurately locate the position of that, everything. Even the slip form has a GPS, which it takes up for the concreting work. So it's easy to monitor that.
Yes.
To great extent, it was precise. Mm.
Yeah. So in near that Bangalore airport office in
Uh-huh.
Port India, after constructing diaphragm wall, they were doing the excavation stage wise. They have done a mistake and entire it was collapsed.
Wall would collapse.
Yes, sir. It was
Mm.
an and the last 20 days also before in Bangalore near Nartaki Theatre backside, the excavation problem made
Yeah,
a
they didn't.
entire building
Correct.
collapsed.
No, no, I was surprised to see that they had not done strutting at all in that.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know, I can't expect how they thought that it will stand such a vertical cut in the soil.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, a bit surprising to see. I think it's a negligence on the part of both contractor as well as the people supervising that.
Yes, sir. And I request participation. If you have any question, please post in chat box. Now it is mandatory for metro. We are always using the diaphragm wall, soldier piles, and top-down construct concepts.
Uh-huh.
Initially, this technology was not there in 2000, but the Prestige Code project I was involved, and I was the designer for the top-down construction piling related. Now in metro, it is a mandatory for this is for underground station. When you want to do, we are going blindly for top-down.
Top down. Actually, in Kuala Lumpur, at few out of six stations, five stations were top-down construction.
Yes, sir.
It's easier, a lot more easier. And what is the role of damping in earthquake?
Ankit is asking what is the role of damper in earthquake?
Uh-huh. Okay. Let's look at it. Suppose I pump some energy into you, uh, or how do you react to it? Suppose you're full of energy. What do? You tend to move around. You want to expend that energy, right? Now, same thing, a structure has a certain limited amount of strength. Okay. Now, if you start pumping more than what is required for that, it cannot take. It just yields. It gives way. Sorry, it says, sorry, I can't take this anymore. I'll give up. So it just gives up. Now, you need some kind of a protection for such kind of thing. So, how do I protect that? Basically, that is a damper. What the damper does is it says, okay, this is the energy. Probably if you have studied basic principles of dynamics, you understand a semi-definite system where I have a mass and top of it I have another mass and then connected by spring. But at a particular frequency, only the top mass starts vibrating, the bottom mass remains stable. See, that's how you can look at it, the damper. Basically, if you look at these are the passive dampers where I can tune it for the first level of the frequency that I want. That means maybe the first mode or whichever is the dominant mode for me, I try to tune it for that so that at that particular level, when it reaches that point, this damper will be able to absorb the energy and protect the structure.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Rahul is asking, dampers takes away the shear.
It's not shear, it takes away the energy. See, think of earthquake and a wind as an energy. It doesn't matter whether it is shear or bending or whatever it is. If some amount of energy is pumped into the system, I need to take that energy off. So the force could be informed. So basically what we are trying to do that is start to absorb that kind of a energy that is given into it. That is what it is. That is the purpose. What
Last,
base isolation technique and the damper.
yeah, they're asking the difference between isolation technique and damper.
Okay. Base isolation, I'm trying to see that the building is isolated from the effect of the wind, the earthquake. So I have certain things like a column-like thing which is projecting out on that, and that helps in absorbing the energy of it, and the building does not get that energy. Whereas in a damper, the entire building is subjected to to this kind of seismic force, and the damper helps in absorbing that energy. That is the difference here. How to decide on the weight of the damper? Again, it depends upon your requirements. What is your mode? What is the amount of energy that needs to be absorbed? All other things will come into play when you are designing that system. Uh,
Last,
Pre-stressing. So that damper related to pre-stressing? No, it's not related to anything to pre-stressing. Pre-stressing is that you are trying to induce stress into a material before it is being loaded. That is the meaning of pre-stress. I don't have to pre-stress the damper. No need to do that. I just suspend the damper and then it absorbs energy. A simple example would be like your shock absorber that you have in your motorbike. Basically, that is a damper. That the spring absorbs energy when it goes over the pothole. It just absorbs the energy and you don't feel that the hit of the bike onto the pothole. So that is an example of that. The
yes.
damper related, okay.
Last question. Christopher is asking why chamfer square shape plan was used in the building. Does chamfer square plane have advantage over the cylindrical structure?
See, it's very difficult to build a streamlined structure on this in a civil engineering structure. I can't make it cylinder. It has to meet the shape of what architect is intending to do. So you will end up having a sharp corner there. So if I can soften the corner, that's what we found from the wind tunnel test, it reduces the base moment. So that's the reason why we had to soften the corner. That is the reason behind it.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think if you have any question, please email us. We will pass these questions to speaker and we will update you. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for your wonderful presentation. Yeah, before going out of thanks, I want to say I'm thankful to all the participants for coming to attend this 5 days global workshop on brainstorming on new frontiers of civil engineering. With your support, we are able to complete this 5 days global workshop successfully. And also I am always thankful to our honorable founders, Vice Chancellor and Pro Vice Chancellor, and also our honorable director, Professor Sridhara, for providing us with all possible logistic support towards organizing this event. And also I am sincerely thanks to our Dr. Arvind Basham for accepting our invitation to be a guest of speaker for this webinar. And also I thank to Mr. Ankit Batra and Sakshi Gupta for his support for organizing this seminar. In addition, I take this opportunity to announce our upcoming couple of events shortly from our department. I need similar support from you. This information we will be updating you subsequently. At this end, I once again heartily thanks to all our faculty, staff member and participants for their support making this workshop successfully. Thank you one and all.